Hello, it's me. Welcome back. Let's talk teaching. All right, in our last video, we talked about the different ways that online teaching is different than face-to-face teaching, namely that our students are not conditioned for online, that physical affect is different, and that there is limited functionality in Zoom or other online conferencing software to what we used to do face-to-face. What I'd like to focus on is this physical affect thing, because like it or not, our physical affect is also how we teach. This has to do with our authentic teaching persona. It's an authentic teaching persona because one, it's teaching. It's a different mode of being than we might be as ourselves. Two, it's a persona. It's not us, or at least it shouldn't be. I know that me as a person reacts differently to things than me as a teacher. Teaching Madeline has space for processing, has already decided that kindness is my modus operandi. I'm always going to respond with kindness first, with boundaries, but with kindness, and we'll discuss that at the end. And it's also authentic. This is me. It's a slightly heightened version of me, but it is me. It's wearing baseball caps. It's having pink eyeglasses. It's using a fan and other props to punctuate what I'm doing, but it's me. And students respond to real, whether they're my 12-year-olds learning math or our college students, non-traditional returning students. They respond to real. You need to think about how you are going to convey your realness in this pre-professional environment. Shout out to Carolyn. Okay? So when you think about your authentic teaching persona, understand that your camera is going to flatten it. Regardless, you could be like the most effervescent, sparkling person. I'm thinking of Kat in particular. And the camera is going to take away a little bit from that. So what you need to do is figure out how you are going to punctuate different things to get your students to understand them. Are you going to take the same posture when there's a point they need to get? Are you going to get closer to the camera when you really want them to understand something? Or are you going to be chill? Are you going to lead everything super relaxed? This is killing me right now. I can't even do it just to pretend, right? Think of it this way. If you've ever seen Professor Chrysanthos teach, you know that he's eminently chill. Probably the chillest professor I've ever seen in my life, right? Leaning back, chanclas out for the world to see, maybe in some cargo shorts, speaking very calmly and slowly about Genghis Khan, right? And if you've ever seen Professor Eckert teach to undergrads, you know that it's a completely different experience. He's high energy. He modulates his voice from high to low. He works the room as well. He can't stay still. And that's actually different than the Professor Eckert you'll encounter in office hours, in TA meetings, and in graduate seminars, right? So knowing how you want to engage students and what might work for your personality and just who you are as a person is going to help engage them. It's doubly difficult when you're doing online because, again, the camera does kind of flatten everything. You're going to become a digital ghost, okay? And when you become a digital ghost, some of the ways that you might have used in-person space before to engage students is going to change. This is something that's trial and error, so don't beat yourself up if you feel like the online teaching version of you is boring. We've all been there. The only reason I feel more confident in my online teaching persona is because I've studied people streaming on Twitch. How do they use the camera? How do they interact with space in the camera to punctuate points? I've also watched recordings of myself, which is miserable, but has been very helpful for me in order to become in my opinion, a stronger teacher. So think about maybe a little more intentionally than you would what kind of teacher you are, and then be true to that. Because the more true you are, the more real you are, and the more real you are, the more your students are going to appreciate it. Now, the relationships that you build with students online are going to be different than the relationships you build with students offline. The reason for this, I think, is because I only exist in this camera, right? I'm like a digital ghost to my students. They don't stick around in office hours as much. They don't even attend office hours as much. They don't interact with me in the same way. And part of that is because of the platform, right? I don't really seem real. I could be on a YouTube video. I could just be a voice in the ether, right? I don't really seem like a person. So one of the important things to do to build these relationships with these students is to humanize yourself. And this can be hard. I think for several of us, or a lot of us, we have this idea of power and authority coming from a place of distance, coming from a place of not being familial or close or warm, right? And it's all about what you consider to be professional. In my opinion and in my experience, the more relationships you can build with your students, the more willing they are to take your criticism. The more willing they are to try harder because they have that relationship with you. And in K through 12 education, this is called the warm demander. So the warm demander is someone who is warm and is kind and has patience, but also has boundaries and expectations that they've made explicit in order for students to succeed. And I would encourage you all to become the warm demander, whatever that looks like for you, because we should be leading with kindness as a pedagogical praxis, but also understanding that students do thrive when they have clear expectations and boundaries. So because you're not going to have the same sort of relationships with students, in fact, I can already tell you that students are less likely to come to online office hours, you also need to have boundaries with yourself. You're now at home. It's not like you have to be in your office for office hours. Office hours can literally take place anywhere. And there's a beauty to that. You don't need to be tied to one place. But there's also a problem. You are now always available. So make sure you're not always available. Set particular times in which you're going to interact with students and hold yourself to them. Being kind and building relationships doesn't mean that you are now a floor mat for everyone. Okay? So, our takeaways. Authentic teaching persona. What does that look like on your screen? How are you going to humanize yourself? Are you going to show pictures of your animals? I often have a special guest, Bodhi or Nova, come through and say hi to my students. How are you going to be yourself on camera? This is very isolating and it's really weird. How are you going to get over that, right? And then finally, what sort of boundaries are you going to put in place to make sure that you are taking care of yourself? Remember, this is not normal. This is not business as normal. You need to make sure that you have boundaries in order to thrive and to be there for your students and to be there for your families and to be there for yourself. Okay? So, start thinking about how you can use this space, how you can be yourself on camera, and how being real is going to help build those relationships with your students.